This week's podcast is proudly sponsored by the Philips OLED Plus 935 TV, a new flagship OLED TV that combines the new AI Plus P5 processor with sound by Bowers & Wilkins to once again push the boundaries for outright picture and sound quality in a premium TV. To find out more, visit philips.com/OLED Plus.
Hello and welcome to AVForums Podcast, streaming live on Wednesday, the 4th of November. And joining me this time is Steve Withers.
People should not be afraid of their governments. Governments should be afraid of their people.
Ed Selley.
I'm useless without a stereo audience.
And Tom Davies.
Take that, my fat metal friend.
So welcome back. We are, again, streaming live. If you're joining us on YouTube, thank you very much for taking the time to join us. Don't forget the chat window is there for you to add your chat and speak to each other, as well as asking questions. So it's good to see you if you're joining us live. If you're not joining us live, if you're listening later in the week, welcome along to you. It is appreciated for you listening in if you're walking the dog and so on. And of course, you can find us on iTunes, Spotify, and other podcast providers. And if you do have questions that you want to ask us, then you can still do the same thing that I'm going to go through here. But you need to email us at podcast@avforums.com. It's not difficult. My mind went blank for whatever reason there. So yes, it must be old age. So you can email us any questions. Also, if you are on YouTube and you're watching us live or you're watching a replay of the video, please like the video. It is important that you do like it. It helps the video get found in YouTube's algorithm and search results and all the rest of it. And new people can find us and come and join our AV cult, like everybody else here. And of course, if you find the classifieds forum,
didn't you?
I did, yes. And if you find the classifieds, God help your bank balance. That's all I'm going to say. But AV Forums is a great place to go and visit. So do that. If you're watching us on YouTube, subscribe, hit the bell, as Steve would say. And of course, your support is appreciated. It helps us do things on editorial content and new videos and all the rest of it. And of course, you can help us on a monthly basis by giving us a donation of £3 per month via Patreon. That's patreon.com/AVForums. Like I say, £3 a month. It is appreciated to all our patrons. Thank you very much for your support. Or if you want to ask us a question tonight and you want to get our attention so we notice your question, then the best way to do that is to make a donation, because it pops up on screen and we are all notified that you've been incredibly generous, and you can donate any amount you like. And you do that via streamlabs.com/AVForums. And like I say, if you do support us in any way, it does help us grow AV Forums, improve the site speed and features, produce more editorial content like news and reviews. And at some point we will do the perfect podcast, just like the perfect lap. Does it exist? I don't know. Steve, what have you been doing this week?
Well, obviously, you've been watching the never-ending soap opera that is the American election and American politics.
We were going to vow not to talk about that this evening because it's still on a knife edge as we go.
It was, but it's certainly been entertaining. I'm not sure for the right reasons. Other than that, though, not much, to be honest. I think you should move on.
Short and sweet.
Yeah, and it's not going to change in lockdown. Well, you're
as of tomorrow.
Lockdown.
No.
Yeah. Okay.
It's back to life as normal for me tomorrow.
All right.
You mean everyone joins you in doing what your normal life is? Yeah.
Right. Tom, what have you been doing?
Oh,
nice top, by the way. I just noticed the top.
I know, it's good, huh?
Oh, yeah, cool.
You get that top, man?
I paid a pretty penny for it on the internet. For anyone listening on the audio, I'm dressed like Boba Fett because I'm a loser.
Disappointingly, it doesn't appear to be made out of Beskar, though.
No, it's hard to come by these days. So I hear.
I'm told.
Yeah. I don't know. I can't put this any other way than saying I've had a bit of a Steve week. I've not done anything. I've been very, very boring this week.
Well, I mean, this section of the podcast is going to dwindle over the next few weeks.
It was never that thrilling to start with, but it's
no.
Like as a segment, I think it's run its course, hasn't it? We need to find something else to ask us other than like, what haven't you done?
How many pigeons did you count on next door's roof this morning?
Oh no! I tell you what, we've been looking after our guinea pigs. And my little one spent all Saturday afternoon cleaning them out, washing them down. I was super proud. What a He's really taken his responsibility seriously with them, and that has made me a proud dad.
Good.
Hey,
I
that's
quite like guinea pigs. They're quite cool. I quite like guinea pigs. I think they're the smallest animal that you can form a meaningful emotional bond with.
They're great.
My uncle had a guinea pig. I'm just going to mention this. Let it out when he was a kid. Let it out, and his mother, who was doing the ironing at the time, stepped on it.
Oh my
Unfortunately,
That's most unpleasant.
Was it all right?
It was fine.
you think, Steve?
Full recovery.
Did it go to that farm in the sky?
Yep.
My dad told me once. I came home from school. I had a rabbit, one of those white albino rabbits, and it was a bit on the fat side, I have to say. I came home one day from school. It obviously died while I was in school, but he told me it had blown up because I'd fed it too much. For years, I carried the guilt of this with me, thinking like, oh, I never felt rabbit to the point where it actually exploded. And then when I got to a certain age, I'm like, hang on a minute, that's bollocks, isn't it?
That's top dadding, that is.
At least you weren't asked to look after next door's rabbit and your golden retriever decided to have it for Sunday lunch.
Yes.
Yes, that happened as well.
Excellent. But no, as I say, guys, it's good. I like guinea pigs.
Yeah. So what have you been up to this weekend?
I have been finishing off my work for you guys. I had to do a spot of self-isolating because someone I'd come into contact with who'd helped me move, I helped me rebox a review item, which is will be appearing on AVForums. And then about 40 minutes after he'd done that, he gave me the message, oh, I've got to self-isolate. So we waited until he got a negative case. So
you should be wearing a mask, really, Ed, right now. I mean,
I take that under advisement.
Okay.
So that was fine. I celebrated by driving this enormous box back to its owners yesterday because it was the first day I'd been allowed out. So I took an exciting trip to Didcot. And yeah, that's if an exciting trip to Didcot, not Epcot, Didcot.
Go and look at the power station. Is it still there? Or
it's not still there. It's mostly been removed. But no, I did get very close to where the power station used to be, dropping this off. So yes, if that's the highlight of my week, you can surmise that's pretty much been. I drove
to where a power station used to be.
I will say that obviously the lockdown this time round does not include schools, and I find myself torn with this because I have to be honest. I think that certainly older education groups are clearly a source of spread for COVID-19.
You'd think so, wouldn't you?
Something needs to be done. But equally, I've just done 4 days trapped in a house with a 7-year-old. So
you'll take your chances, won't you?
It's a balancing act, isn't it?
Myself and Steve were having this conversation on Monday and saying, it's a disgrace that they haven't closed the schools and all this. But then me and Steve don't have to worry about spending time with kids trapped in the house. So it
makes no sense, but thank God.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. We'll see how it plays out. But every day where I'm self-isolating and I only have my son for the normal hours is a day where I can actually do something. I mean, I can work when he's here. It's just you work in 18-minute chunks before he comes down and asks you a random question about what happens with 8 dolphins versus 1 killer whale, and just standard stuff. So. Yeah, we'll see how that plays out.
What does happen with 8 dolphins versus 1 killer whale?
Well, I winged it and suggested that even 8 dolphins would probably leave a killer whale well alone because they're hard bastards.
Yeah.
That's my totally uneducated take on that particular problem. So, yes.
Anything that can snack on the liver of a great white shark without too much effort is something to prevent.
Yeah, you don't want to mess about with them. I mean, just because they've got like jaunty makeup doesn't stop them being murderous bastards.
I thought it was considered inappropriate to refer to them as killer whales these days, aren't they? Just orcas.
Yeah, they're still pretty killer though, aren't they?
Yeah, but they're not technically whales, are they? Isn't that the reason they're not called killer whales anymore?
I think that's true. I've heard that too. They're just orcas.
Also, it's a terrible film from 1970.
It is, isn't it? It's a bloody cashing in on Jaws or what?
A really bad Jaws ripoff, with Bo Derek who gets a leg chopped off by one of the orcas.
I was unaware of the existence of that. So, well, depending on how dreadful things get, who knows? That could be something to chase down. So,
what I've been doing, catching up basically, so I've now done all the reviews. Well, I haven't actually physically done the reviews. They've still got to be written up and so on. But I finished my workload before Editor's Choice, which is coming up in the next couple of weeks. So we're starting a new month. So lots coming up in November, even though we're going to be locked down. There's lots coming up on the podcast. We've got Chris Mullins from Sony. He'll be along at the end of the month. We're going to have Rick next week and possibly Mark as well, talking about the new consoles. So the new Xbox and the new PS5. So stay tuned for next week. I mean, we've got them booked in. Whether they turn up or not is another thing. But, you know, we'll see. It's not like they're going anywhere, so they haven't really got that many.
They've got no excuse to get out of it, have they? Really?
I don't know. Mark can probably claim some sort of DIY injury.
Building a bike, building a shed, becoming a beekeeper,
it was a plasterer this week. As you can see behind me, that's an 8K Samsung. It's okay.
It's turned off though, Phil, so it's really hard to tell.
It's hard to tell when it's switched on, Steve, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
So.
Have you got a lot of 8K content to watch on it?
No, but I watched a bit of YouTube 8K. It has now got the codec, so it will play 8K video through it. And my internet speed's fast enough, so I watched a couple of these travel vlog type things where they all nice scenery and all the rest of it. And it looked like a 4K version. So
worth it.
This is the problem with 8K. We're going to come round to it at some point. We won't go into it just this evening. And what else have we been doing? Oh yes, sold my car today.
Really?
No.
Yeah, it's gone.
It's gone forever. It's already
getting picked up tomorrow morning.
Oh no.
So you have no motor transport, although not going to need it.
He's got himself a Tesla, right? Tesla Model 3?
Nope.
You don't. Let's not do this now.
Nope.
Let's not do this.
No. We are not going there, Tom. So don't even think about it.
So you currently have no vehicle then?
Couple of serious.
Well, it's not like I'm going anywhere, Steve.
Oh, right. No, I appreciate you ain't going anywhere.
Couple of serious. Presumably, one. Have you retained the plate?
No.
No.
No, because I'd need to find somebody with another RTR Mustang, and there's only two in the UK, and they've both got RTR plates on. So,
I suppose that's a good point. Well made.
So,
I never understood why you got a plate that said "I love Dick" when your name's not Richard anyway. To be honest.
Yeah, boom, boom, Tish. Yeah.
Be here all week. Try the veal. Don't forget to tip your waitress.
Right. So tell me, just for the sheer joy of it, are you going to buy a slightly shabby Fiesta ST, like you have mentioned at the time at various points? Just a slightly tired one.
I haven't looked at Auto Trader yet, but I've got a few grand to play with to get a little runabout, which I'll then trade against the next Mustang when I get the next Mustang. There's no point in having a Mustang at the minute. We're going to be locked down well into next year. There's none of the club events happened this year. None of the club events are going to happen.
So you can't drive
the next year. So, I took the decision. It's going to sit on the side of the road. I may as well move it on. I quite fancy a Mach 1. But we've yet to see what the pricing is going to be on one of them and when they're going to be available. I'm going to keep my options open, build up a little pot, and then see where we go. But yes, to answer your question, Ed, I've already been looking at some Fiestas. So
nice. As I say, it's a totally different thing. But
I think you should get an Escort.
Well, the problem is that
the car.
The problem is, Steve, with Escorts these days, you're right. If you buy one of the old classic ones, they're now worth a fortune. Yeah. And where Phil lives, they will simply evaporate within seconds. Or you can buy a last of the line one on eBay for about £800, and it's as horrible experience as you can imagine. So.
There's a friend of mine has a Escort 1600i, RS 1600i. It's immaculate. The engine was rebuilt recently. It never comes out the garage. If it's raining or any signs of be it the weather being bad, doesn't come out the garage. I think he does. You'd be lucky if he does a couple hundred miles.
Are they prone to rust?
Yes.
Yes, just
I take it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Ford didn't. I mean, to be honest, very few. I mean, the reason
designed them for the desert.
Well, the thing is, Steve, if you remember when we were, were young, people always made a big deal about the fact that Volvos didn't rust. It was because literally everything else did. I mean, that's what actually made Volvos quite sort of special. But no, Fords were. I used to work with a chap in Sweden who pointed out that in their climate, it was generally traditional if you bought a Ford that it was already rusting by the time you bought it. So yeah, not ideal. I need to stress.
You lived near the sea, it was a big issue as well.
I need to stress for the benefit of if anyone from the Ford Motor Company is listening, they have, along with almost every other manufacturer on earth, solved these issues now.
Well, you say that, Ed, but one of the big issues with the Mustang is rust coming in under the...
Yeah, but it's built by Americans for
Yes,
Americans. They wouldn't understand build quality if you beat them to death with the bits that fell off. Sorry.
Lee said Lancia, anyone? Yeah, well, that's another...
Lancia Stratos.
Oh, man. My dad had Lancias all the time when I was growing up. He had a red coupe. He loves Lancias, my dad.
No, unfortunately, people do. They're like an illness. If they get under your skin...
Sorry, Howard, if you're watching.
It becomes a bad thing.
I always want, and it was only available in left-hand drive, I always wanted a Integrale, a Delta Integrale. I always wanted one of them.
I've driven one. It's all right, but
it's one of these.
It's not worth what people now pay for them.
No.
Right, shall we stop this before Steve impales himself on his microphone? I can see the despair creeping in.
I don't know. I'm quite enjoying looking at him squirming on his chair.
I think I actually started this conversation. Which is bizarre.
Foolish.
Yes. But yes, it's getting picked up. That's the third one gone now. So we'll see where we are next year with that.
Yeah. Well, I think. Do you know what?
I'm shocked at myself for doing it. You know, I kept talking about it, but then I got offered. I got an offer that I couldn't refuse, basically, and it's like. Okay.
I tell you what, though, your Instagram followers are going to be baffled.
Yeah.
When the photos of the Mustangs stop, and there'll be occasional photos of Fiesta and a couple of televisions. It's like, what? I mean, I have to say, I'm very thankful to the loyal Cadre people that follow me on Instagram, because they have to be quite determined, because there's no pattern. You get a sort of medley of cats, soup, occasional hi-fi, and it's just...
It's an eclectic mix on your feed.
So, but yes, thank you all the same.
Yeah. Right, so let's move on. It's competition time. What can we win, Tom?
We've got loads of competitions still open this month. First up, we've got a copy of Criterion's November titles on Blu-ray, which includes The Irishman, 5 Easy Pieces, Girlfriends, and that closes on the 3rd of December. There's a whole load of Lionsgate cult classic Blu-rays, including Last Exit to Brooklyn, Snowpiercer, Reservoir Dogs, American Psycho, Requiem for a Dream. That closes on the 26th of November. You can win a copy of The Crown Season 3 on Blu-ray in advance of the new season coming out. That competition closes on the 24th. Copy of the HMV exclusive Japanese cover Hindenburg Steelbook on Blu-ray, I should say. That closes on the 20th of November. The Ultimate Trilogy Back to the Future on 4K. You can win that. That closes on the 20th of November. Vikings Season 6 Volume 1 on Blu-ray. That closes on the 9th. Jaws on the HMV exclusive Steelbook with the Japanese artwork. That closes on the 6th of November. Batman, Death in the Family on Blu-ray closes on the 6th. Criterion's October titles, that competition's still open, and you can win them if you enter before the 5th of November. They include Life and Times of Harvey Milk, Eraserhead, and Topsy Turvy. You could also win a pair of Philips Fidelio X3 headphones worth £299, and that closes on the 1st of December. All competitions are open to eligible AVForums members resident in the UK, and also we'll have a couple of exclusive competitions coming up just a bit later. One of them, a Patreon exclusive. So if you are a patron through Patreon, then you can enter the competition to win a copy of Ghostbusters 1 and 2 on 4K. And that closes on the 20th of November. And as always, we'll have a podcast exclusive competition where you'll be able to win a copy of El Camino, the Breaking Bad movie, on Blu-ray. And that will close on the 19th of November. As for previous winners, we've got GD 2007, who won a copy of Sorry We Missed You on HMV exclusive Blu-ray. Manioso, I'm assuming is how you pronounce this name, won a copy of Jewel on HMV, the Japanese steelbook, on Blu-ray. Zipped Up won a copy of Whiplash on 4K, and Two Mms Thu Mms won a copy of You'll Never Best Me on DVD. And that is it.
I love your
Excellent.
phonetic treatment of all of our members. That's Ron Burgundy-esque in its magnificence.
Yeah.
Enjoy your DVDs, Tootums Thootums.
There's some well done to the winners. There's some cracking prizes there. The Fidelio X3s well worth entering. So get your entries in for that. Cracking pair of headphones there. We'll be back in a sec with hardware. So we are back to the hardware. And everybody's
now like Parkinson.
Yeah, everybody's gone. Right, so before you go ahead, you've got 9 minutes, I suppose. So Spendor speakers, you've been looking at those. The review's going to go up this week, so tell us all about them.
Yes. Now, this starts with an impassioned plea, because the photo has just gone up of these next to my head, and a number of you and a number of people watching this afterwards, and when they see the review, you're going to look at that and you are going to assume that it's a sort of twee old thing that plays jazz very softly, all very lovely, maybe a bit of spoken word, so on and so forth. If you are one of our many members that has setups where I see plenty of them listed on the forums, where you've got PC setups and you've got monitors close by on either side of the screen, and you do a lot of near field listening, please, for the love of all things, read this review. This is not the best near field loudspeaker I've ever tested, but the best near field loudspeaker I ever tested cost £10,800. These don't. Spendor is one of the elder statespeople of the British loudspeaker industry. They've been around for over 50 years now in one form or another. They were one of the companies that originally produced licensed copies of the BBC 3.5 monitor, which is perhaps the original broadcast monitor. Now, they still make a version of that. It's called the Spendor A1. I've done a review of that. You can read that at your leisure. The 4.5 is like a 3.5, but it takes into account everything that Spendor's been learning over the time involved. It is still a small sealed two-way monitor speaker. Now, sealed two-way monitor loudspeaker, a dinky thing. Please do not expect seismic bass out of this if you park them in a big room. They simply aren't designed to do that sort of thing. However, used near field, and even actually used in a compact but not incredibly small room, they can do things that are completely beyond what most of rivals at the price can do. And I say this, I mean, they've been tested at a similar price point to things that we've looked at this year, the Neat Ministra. They are £400 cheaper than the PMC 2521i. It's always like a crossword puzzle. And there are certain elements where the Spendor is absolutely demolished by those loudspeakers. They have more bass, more slam, more impact. But if you are listening in a closed, in a near field environment, these are just utterly astonishing at what they can do. And in terms of tonal realism and essential lack of coloration, they're not good for a £1,600 loudspeaker. They are good pretty much regardless of price. And then obviously we can't ignore the fact that they do look a bit sort of old, but that's part of Spendor's classic line.
There's a lot to be said for nostalgia though, Ed, and I think that's where the designs kind of harks back a little bit.
I agree. I think there's also something to be said for the fact that as they have never really been in fashion, they'll also never be out of fashion. Yeah. They look how they look. I would also say that they are beautifully made. genuinely lovely. Spendor has always made their own drivers, so both the tweeter and the mid bass on that, you won't find any permutation of them anywhere else. They are built exclusively for Spendor, by Spendor, but they've now moved to doing their cabinets as well. And not only do they do their own cabinets, when they were dropped off pre-lockdown, I stress, I was allowed to socialise. I didn't realise the list of people that they're now building other cabinets for. So yeah, they're doing a fine job of what they do. The other thing about these speakers I don't know how useful this will be in the context of AVForums, because for the most part, very few people go for fairly low-powered devices. But these are 8 ohm speakers, and when we say that, when I normally say these are 8 ohm speakers, you then get a thing in the brackets, and actually their minimum impedance will be some way lower than that. We've got the Bose & Wilkins 705 signature turning up. Sorry, not turning up, it's been reviewed. It's actually going home tomorrow. That's described as an 8 ohm speaker, but its minimum impedance is 3.7 ohms. This is an 8 ohm speaker, and the lowest it drops at any point for any period at all is 6.1 ohms. They are absurdly easy to drive. And because of that, you can essentially choose them without being in any way concerned about what your amplifier is going to do with them. I mean, obviously there are limits to the sheer level of sound that a compact box under these circumstances is going to produce. But again, near field, it really isn't going to be an issue. This is, as you might imagine, I like these speakers very much. I've made the provisos about what they can and can't do. I'd strongly advocate having a look through the review if you are looking for something that's going to work pretty much regardless of where you place it, and pretty much regardless of how close you are to where they're sited, because they do things that are completely beyond more conventional rivals. And I would say also that in the flesh, especially in the that photo is actually the finish that they turned up in. But without meaning to sound smug, I think I've done a better job of actually capturing the how they look under natural light, because the pop-up studio I use is D50, and I think the wood finish looks better for real than it does there. So
that's when you can get the cat out of there.
Oh, when I can get the cat out of the studio. And then not only that, Phil, I had to hoover it after that. There was fur everywhere. I mean, I'm aware. I look at photos that I've put up, and I just think if they were done in a rush, it's not nice. I can see fur on photos, and it's like, this is not as professional as I'd like. But I physically hoovered the studio after that. Gordon Wheeler's just asked, are either of the CamelPhat LS50 new releases inbound anytime soon? Yes. So all I'm going to say for now, but yes, they are. Yep. But no, this, as I say, will be going up presently. Please don't judge this book by its cover. It does things that are well beyond what you might expect something that looks like it escaped from the set of The Archers to do.
Okay, good stuff. Thanks for that, Ed. We'll stick with speakers before we go to the TV, and then we're going to discuss new lineup of stuff from Anthem. We haven't seen anything from Anthem for a little while. So yeah, they've dropped everything all at once, like buses. They've all come along at the same time. But before we do that, we've got to talk about some little speakers that are behind me. Actually, they're being hidden by the case there. But XBOOM wireless speakers. Now, if you immediately see these and you think, oh my, but actually they're not bad speakers, Steve, are they?
Yeah. I mean, the name XBOOM Go, this is from LG, I should point out, wireless speakers, Bluetooth speakers, and you sort of see them, and they have like dynamic lighting, although you can turn it off. And they're clearly designed with one eye on the portable party market, by the pool, on the beach. Not that you're going to be doing much of that at the moment. You know, lifestyle product, I guess, would be the best word for it. When you look at them, that's what you immediately think, oh, lifestyle product. Actually, because they are a product that's been developed in conjunction with Meridian, they sound really good, much better than you expect. There's two of them. There's the smaller PL7, which is not the one that's currently showing on screen. You can just see it at the bottom, actually, of the image. That's it. Thank you, Stuart. So it's obviously portable. It's water resistant. It's comfortable. You know, it's one of those ones where the surface is a kind of rubberized material, so you can hold it without worrying about dropping it. There is lighting at either end, but as I said, you can turn that off. It's a Bluetooth speaker. There's a remote app to use with it. And I've got to say, considering its size, it delivers a surprising amount of bass. And whilst obviously it's got a fairly narrow stereo image because it's it's quite small, it does sound really good. So you can, I think I had it on the desk. So obviously it wasn't going to a party. I just stuck it on my desk. And it did a great job, of playing music while I was working. I could take it down in the kitchen, move it around the house very easily. And it sounded really, I was really quite impressed. I mean, honestly, when I first saw it, I wasn't expecting much. And I thought, I'm going to see what this is. This will be all boom. There is a sound, I think they call it sound. Let me just double check what they call it. I think it's sound boost button on the top of it, which does basically beef up the sound and kind of beefs up.
It's a DTS button, isn't it?
There's a DTS button on the other one, not this one.
Oh, right.
This one
Okay.
just has the sound boost button. Sound boost, that's what it's called. And that just kind of gives the sound a bit more of a, I think it's applying Meridian DSP processing, so it gives it a bit more of a presence.
Yeah.
And it's sort of,
I was going to ask you that. Obviously, there's a tie-in with Meridian, but we discussed this on Monday, actually, when we were having a little bit of a chat. There's not a lot there in terms of their marketing that explains what Meridian's part of this is. Now, obviously, they are very, very well known for their DSP stuff. So is that what it's taking advantage of here?
Yes. In fact, Meridian's involvement basically concerns the some of the electronics, DSP, the drive units, and also the mechanical design. So they are heavily involved in this product, and I think that is apparent when you listen to it. You're thinking like, well, that sounds a lot better than I was expecting from a Bluetooth portable party lifestyle speaker from LG. It does actually sound really good. And the next product, the PN7, again, when you first look at it, you're thinking like, it's got a big carry handle at the front. It's got the lighting, which again you can turn off. You immediately think like, oh, okay, yeah, that looks like the kind of product people would crank up at parties and they're flashing away and turning it into a disco. Actually, this sounds really good because it's slightly bigger. It's quite a bit bigger than the PL7. It's got more of a, it's got more width to the soundstage. It's got the same sound boost button, but this is the one with the DTS Stereo Plus button. And I've never experienced DTS Stereo Plus before, but it works really well. It genuinely creates a much wider front soundstage. There's more sort of presence and height to the overall soundstage without losing any of the definition and detail in the recording. I was actually like, wow, this works really well. So when it was on my desk, I tended to have it off because I wanted a slightly smaller soundstage because it was quite close to me. But if I put it in the lounge, for example, I would turn on the DTS Stereo Plus button, and it would fill up the lounge quite nicely. And it's a pretty powerful speaker. And this is the kind of speaker you absolutely could use in a larger room for a party, but it does hold its own as for critical listening if you were just using it to listen to stuff at home or when you're on your own. So don't be put off by the looks. These are lifestyle products to a degree. They are designed for being portable, for being waterproof or water resistant, should I say. They do have features like the lighting, but in terms of the actual audio performance, in terms of the sonic quality, really genuinely impressive speakers. And clearly they obviously LG have been working with Meridian for a while now, but this product, these two products certainly bear the fruits of that partnership. And there's no, you can immediately tell, like, yeah, I can tell that Meridian have had a serious hand in this product and these two products, and that's why
we've struck a weird balance this evening, isn't it? I've been pitching a product that looks like it's aimed at the over 65s, and you've gone for one that looks like it's aimed at the under 12s.
Yeah, I mean, it's when you see the speakers, and when I was at CES last year, I won't name the company, but it was a company who I'd gone along to see the TVs, and then they said, "Oh, come along to our audio event in the evening." At this hotel. So I said, yeah, okay, I'll come along, expecting it to be, the audio that we are into, high-end audio and home theater and all the rest of it. No, it was a tent outside full of these speakers with flashing lights and the big boomy disco.
I think I might know what company that is then.
And it was, I don't think one of them sounded good at all. Yeah. But then they say, oh, what do you think? And it's like, yeah.
Can I have another free drink?
Have you tried them yourself, Phil, since you got them at your place now?
No, they're still in the box, Steve.
Yeah, give them a go.
I will be giving them a go because obviously we're going to shoot some video with them, that and the sound bar and so on. So I will get them out. I'll get them powered up and working and so on, along with the sound bar. It's just like I said at the beginning of this podcast, I've been trying to catch up and get to the editor's choice point before we go any further. So yeah, I will do that. But it's these products. Like you say, you look at them first of all, and you would write them off on their looks. So it's interesting to hear your reviews of them, Steve, to say they were actually.
So I was going to say, I forgot to mention the pricing. So the PN7, the larger one, the one you can see right now on the screen, excuse me, that's 170 quid. And the PL7 is 140 pounds.
Right.
So they're not cheap, but they're not massively expensive either. I think that's quite competitively priced. Obviously, the big thing is they are just Bluetooth speakers. There's no Wi-Fi, but you can do things like you can connect them together. For party mode, if you want to if you had more than one or two, and you can use them as rear speakers with your LG TV.
Do they have aptX, Steve?
I don't know. It just says it's Bluetooth. They're a bit vague on this. I've got to say they were very vague about many things. It's just Bluetooth.
It might be possible to check, depending if Phil can be. If you pair it with your Mac, that will give you a breakdown of the Bluetooth codecs it accepts.
Oh, does it? Where does it say that then?
Once you've paired it, it'll bring up the available streaming options. So there'll be SBC as the standard, then there's AAC, and then it'll show if aptX is available as well. Android phones can also do that, but I don't know if iOS products can. So you might need the Mac to do it.
Right.
Yeah. Stevo 1981. It does say that. It just written strangely. You big thank you. Upgraded to the M&K 750s. Wow. I had the original 750s many moons ago, probably 2004, 2005. Cracking speakers. They were THX Select back then. I don't know if they still have THX certification or not on them, Steve.
They do,
Mark
yes.
They do, yeah. Cracking speakers. I really liked my originals, and the obviously the metal grille as well, which helps with dispersion and so on the front. Really nice design. So glad you like them, Steve-O. You obviously have the
they might be
versions.
making an appearance in the awards later.
Maybe. You never know.
Who knows?
And Disco Stew 5.1.4
is this in response to a question
is
that was
better than
asked earlier on?
7.1.2, and I think it was a question a bit further up. I would argue with that one, Disco Stew. I would actually say that 7.1.2 is probably better than.
We've had this discussion before. That it comes down to the placement of the app of speakers 6 and 7 as much as anything else.
Thanks for that, Ed. It does. Right, let's move on to TVs. So I've been looking at the Samsung 55-inch Q80T. It's an LCD TV. It replaces the Q70R from last year. So it's rather confusing, the 4K lineup from Samsung this year. That's mainly because 8K is the thing, which is why I've got an 8K TV sitting behind me on the stand. That's what Samsung are pushing this year as their higher end TV. So the 80 is a little bit stripped out in terms of features and so on. It doesn't have the anti-reflective coating on the screen. It doesn't have the wide view angle filter either. But saying that, it's still a nicely designed TV for the money. It's just over £1,000, I think, for the 55-inch version anyway. It has most of the features that you will be looking for. Out of the box, it wasn't very accurate in movie mode. There is no filmmaker mode listed on Samsung's TVs, but I understand that they are coming. And I don't think it's like Philips, where Philips name their filmmaker mode, movie mode. I don't think it's on the Samsungs yet because it wasn't very accurate out of the box. A little bit too much push and blue and so on. It needed to be calibrated. And the annoying thing with Samsungs is that they're still using a really antiquated color management system on their sets. Everybody else has gone to hue, saturation, luminance CMSs, Steve. Samsung still insist on their system, which is not intuitive to use and is very, very difficult to control certain hue issues when you're using it. And it's one of these that takes a long time to use. I can't wait till we get them on the CamelPhat over wireless rather than the speaker, the cable connector, and all the rest of it. Because not that the 80T could do it, but I just find the Samsung's not intuitive to use in terms of calibration and so on. However, it does calibrate incredibly accurate. It does look nice. 50 zones. And the I'll just get it right. So I've actually got the whole thing. So it's 5 vertical, 10 horizontal. Because of that, the black bars are black in scope movies, which is nice because although the Sony is incredibly accurate, the XH95 is incredibly accurate. It looks like one of their professional monitors and so on. The black bars tended to light up because, again, the number of zones it was using, whereas the algorithm on the Samsung, it's a bit more aggressive, and of course with the horizontal plane as well, they're able to get the black bars looking black. A big improvement on the gravity scene with Sandra Bullock rolling through space. It's always the one that trips up algorithms. Really quite nice, actually. It looked a lot like the Sony in terms of there wasn't a lot of pumping going on. There wasn't a lot of crushing of detail in the stars. It was really quite nice to look at, and that was on the mid section for the micro dimming, the local dimming, not the micro dimming. So yeah, good performance. It's like I say, I would class it as a mid-range TV, but then I'm looking at TVs that are over £1,000 and classing them as higher end. It's an expensive TV if you're used to buying TVs at £500-600. Is it worth moving up to this? Well, in terms of the picture quality, yes, I think so. It's not as garish as Samsung TVs in the past have looked. They've done a lot of work to make things look a lot more accurate. I'm certainly getting that vibe from Samsung this year. And certainly when I met them at CES, a lot of talk, a lot of demos where they were actually putting it up against professional Sony broadcast monitors and so on, and getting the image quality to look as close as possible. And I've got to say, it is a nice image. I had a few issues with motion, mainly on HDMI 1 and 2, and on 3 and 4, there wasn't as big an issue. And basically, there was every time there's a cut, watching broadcast through HDMI 1 or 2, there would be a micro stutter, and it was quite obvious. Wasn't getting that in 3 and 4, but I put the Meridio onto all 4 HDMI inputs, and I couldn't see any difference in the EDID information that the TV was feeding back. So according to the EDID, there was no differences between those HDMI inputs that I could see there anyway. Certainly motion was better on 3 and 4. Where this TV is going to be really interesting is the fact that for gaming, it looks incredibly good, especially with HDR. It's 1000 nit peak brightness. It's not as bright at 1, 2, and 5%. The reason for that is obviously the algorithm is trying to get rid of any blooming. And basically, when I mention blooming, that's if you've got a white object on a black background, normally you'll see around the object there'd be like a bloom of light. To combat that, basically what it does is it lowers the white level so you don't get as much bloom around. What does happen there is that when you have certain scenes where you have street lights that are maybe supposed to be around about 1000 nits in terms of brightness, if it's in a dark room and there's these lights, they look a lot dimmer than they would on another TV, such as an OLED, because it's trying to combat the blooming effect and so on. Watched on its own in isolation, you probably wouldn't really notice that. You would just see that obviously specular highlights are not quite as bright as they should be. But getting back to the gaming side of things, I thought for a gaming TV, it's really good. The sound system on it, and it's just a normal downward firing sound system. I thought it was really, really quite impressive for this type of TV. And of course, the Samsungs.
Random question, Phil. Do you think this is a result of, because obviously it's got quite a sophisticated backlight, this gives them a bit more volume to actually put something halfway?
Well, obviously it's not as thin as an OLED. It has to have a bit at the back because it is a full array local dimming backlight that's on there. So yes, I think they've upped the quality of the speakers as well. And they've done that across the whole range because as they have, I forget the name of it now. Steve will know what the name is. What's the name of the direct object speakers, Steve?
Object tracking sound.
The object tracking, that's
Tracking
what it is.
sound.
So obviously they've introduced that across most of the range, and to be honest with you, it's excellent. It's really good. If you attach a soundbar as well, it then expands the soundbar as well in terms of volume and so on, and speaker placement and so on. And I've got to say, audio-wise, I was really surprised with it because it sits higher as well, Ed. So this is what was coming on to there when you mentioned the thickness. So the stands are a little bit higher. Yeah. So it's got more room underneath the TV as well. For the speakers to breathe, basically. So yeah, it's an impressive TV. If you're a gamer, 11 milliseconds of input lag, you can't complain at that. That's 1080 60 as well as 4K 60 with HDR metadata as well. So it's the same, it's 11 milliseconds, whatever the signal is. Yeah, it's a really solid TV. Recommendation from me, I think. If you are into gaming, if you're looking for a TV for a brighter room, maybe not so much in terms of movies, but just watching normal TV, sports, and all the rest of it. It's a solid TV, and it's what you'd expect from Samsung, but toned down a bit. And again, the only thing with HDR is if you have got one of these sets is contrast, knock it down -4 in terms of the contrast from 50 to 46. That corrects the ST2084 curve. It's a little bit too bright at 50. I wish they would fix it because it's easy to fix, especially for movie mode, which is what I'd recommend people watch it in anyway. So, it's going to be a lot more garish and brighter in the standard and vivid modes. I would avoid them if you want any accuracy. But yeah, it's a solid TV. And like I say, I think it's just over £1,000, maybe 1,100 quid at the minute. Good value, well built, well screwed together. Samsung know what they're doing with LCDs. And like I say, this year, they're not as in your face when it comes to picture quality. They're a lot more accurate, and they're going for accuracy in their movie modes. So, and
their service support's pretty good as well, isn't it?
I don't know. I've never had to use it, Ed. It's
no, sorry. I mean, in terms of the inbuilt options for all of the major streaming services.
Oh, everything's on there. So everything, Now TV, Disney Plus, Apple, they're all on there. So, and that's another thing I forgot to mention. Well mentioned there. So Tizen, we gave it an editor's choice last year, and I've got to say they've improved it again this year. And another thing, the menu system is now a dark color. It's no longer white. So when you're
blue,
HDR, it's blue color.
Much easier on the eyes.
Oh, you go into a menu in HDR on an old Samsung set with a white menu. Is
it like Raiders of the Lost Ark?
It's like when the mothership lands in Close Encounters and they'll start putting on the sunglasses.
Yeah, they're all sunburnt.
The door opens up.
Yeah, so it's a good solid TV. The review will be up probably next week. I finished with that yesterday. It's packed up, ready to go back. The 8Ks will take a little bit longer because, like I say, we've got Editor's Choice coming up, which we're probably going to talk about starting next week or maybe the week after. But that's coming up soon. So that's the Samsung TV. So to wrap up on hardware before we move over to software, so we mentioned earlier on, Anthem have not been around for a while. Well, they've been around, they just haven't updated their range of products for a while. But they've gone to town this time around because they have announced 2 processors and 3 power amplifiers and is it 3 AV receivers
3
as well?
AVRs, I think, 3 AVRs.
Yeah, so 3 of everything. They've all come along in 3s. So take us through it, Steve, because I mean, the one that interests me is the AVM 90 AV processor. That looks really interesting. I like the design this year as well. I like the way that it's not a traditional design. It's a bit Yamaha-ish, the way that they've changed theirs this year. So, but yeah,
I really like their new. Yeah, so they've launched. Just to run through what they've actually launched. So there's the MRX 520, 720, and 1120 AV receivers. Is that right?
Yeah.
No, hang on. No. Sorry, that was last time. Which, by the way, so the 520, 720, and 1120 were the ones they launched back in 2016. That's when I reviewed the 1120. So it's been over 4 years since their last lineup. Yeah. The new ones are the MRX 740 and 1140.
So there was no 30s. They've gone from 20s to 40s.
Yes. So it's 540, 1140, and 540, 740, and 1140. And the number, the first number obviously denotes the number of channels of amplification. So 5 channels, 7 channels, and 11 channels. And then there's also the processor that you mentioned, Phil, the AVM70 and the AVM90. So there's 2 there. And then there's power amps as well. So there's the MCA 225 and the MCA 325. So that's 2-channel, 3-channel, and the MCA 525, which is a 5-channel amp. And I've got to say that the redesign looks really nice. It's a really clean, elegant design. Not dissimilar in some respects. It reminds me a lot of the Lindorf with the kind of two-tone, the black.
That's a bit, the
black, sort of a glossy black and a matte black. There's a dial, a couple of buttons, and a large display. And that's it. I do like it a lot. I think it's because their older, their previous models, previous generation, did look a little long in the tooth, looking a bit old. This looks really nice. I also like the fact that they haven't got a shed load of connections at the back you're never going to use. They just concentrate on the things you actually need. So, lots of HDMI basically, and then some other, legacy connections, but it's not like they're throwing in loads of component or composite connections, which you're never going to need. And they color code their speaker binding posts, which is also quite a nice touch. In terms of features, so they'll have what they've got. They've got Dolby Atmos and DTS:X, of course, IMAX Enhanced, AirPlay 2, Google Chromecast, Spotify Connect, and a Roon support as well. So that's pretty well.
That's good. That's
covered.
good to see that finally starting to creep into the AV.
Connections are HDMI 2.0B, so no 8K or 4K 120 hertz support, but given what we were talking about last week, that might not be a bad
Well, I was just going to say allegedly it doesn't work on other ones that are supposed to have it. So.
They've got a beefed up new the processor. So the processor, they're not AVM90, that can do 15.4 channels in total. So 15 channels plus 4 subs, up to 4 subs, which is quite impressive actually. And it's using a new 32-bit DAC. Is anything else of interest in here?
I like what I like about the design, and I'm reading some of the comments, and some people don't like the design, but I like the fact that the AVRs, the processors, and the power amps all look the same. They've got a very, very similar design, so you can stack the power amps and then your processor on top, and it's all going to look really quite nice as a setup.
I sort of agree, except that there is a tendency for processor power amp owners not necessarily to go all in with one company. I mean, I have to be honest, I don't think, for example, that what Anthem's done here is going to scare the horses if you do decide to go for another company's amplification. But I dislike the automatic assumption that you're going all in. Not least because, as we know, the exchange rate for processors, one of the advantages of getting to this point, as we've discussed, is that you change processors rather more readily than you do amplification. So it could be that people end up with the older Anthem amplification because there's still absolutely nothing wrong with that. But it's still a nice piece of industrial design. I'm going to stake my my flag to the mast here. I think the best looking processor launched in the last couple of weeks is that Macintosh one, but spec wise, I think the Anthems have it. So
Plus, it'll be about 4 times more expensive, the Macintosh.
I
was actually pleasantly surprised that I would only have to sell 1 kidney for the Macintosh. I can't remember exactly what it was.
That's one thing that is quite impressive about the Anthem lineup, is that they are competitively priced. So the 540, that's a 7.2 channel processor, but 5 channels of built-in amplification, 1,799 quid. The 740 can do 11.2 channels of processing and has 7 channels built in, 2,799. And the 1140, the big one, has got 15.2 channels of processing and has 11 channels built in, and that's 3,899. And then the AVM70 processor has 15.2 channels of processing, and that's 3,599. And then the AVM90 is 15.4 channels, and that's 6,749. So
that is actually
the AVRs in particular, the AV1140, that's, and I know I used to have an Anthem, and the numbers they sort of quote for their built-in amplification, the power numbers are actually realistic. They're not crazy, and so when they might seem a bit low compared to competition, but that's actually what you're genuinely getting.
All channels driven.
Yes, exactly. And I've got to say that that pricing looks quite saucy for what are some interesting products.
Yep, good stuff. Right, I can see Boba Fett's getting a bit annoyed now. He wants to talk about software. We better not cross him. I've been told. Right, so we're going to move on to software next. Bob is going to have to wait because Ed's doing his album of the week. What is it, Ed?
Oh, what?
Oh yes,
Boba, no disintegrations.
Right, okay. I'll be relatively brief on this. It hasn't been a great week for music, but something to take your mind off things. If you are yearning for the big sounds of the stadium, the unusually named CamelPhat with a PH rather than an F, which is some group of, I'm not necessarily entirely familiar with the constituent parts behind the electronic end of things, but it's people who are quite well known as DJ performers in their own right. It's a sort of DJ super group, and they've released an album called Dark Matter, which has loads and loads of guest vocalists. It's an absolute whopper of an album. It's about 28 tracks or something bonkers. I'm not going to lie, this doesn't break any new ground. In some regards, it doesn't necessarily stick hugely in your head, but it's something that's very enjoyable to listen to. I've listened to it about 4 or 5 times on the bounce over the week since it came out, because it's crafted in such a way as it just sort of hammers away at you in a compelling and entirely sort of amenable way. I'm not going to suggest that this is going to be in the running for album of the year, but if you are looking for something to take your mind off what's happening in America or the fact that you're now locked down and all the rest of it, it's entertaining and it's diverting, and sometimes that's all an album needs to be. I have thoroughly enjoyed listening to it over the time since it was launched on the Friday. I would say that if you are a jazz fan, and I choose. I'm only very sparing on the number of times I try and inflict jazz albums as album of the week. It's been an absolutely magnificent week for jazz, but I'm not going to inflict that on you guys. If you have a Qobuz subscription in particular, that's something that they're pushing really strongly at the moment. So have a play and have a listen. But that CamelPhat album it's thoroughly entertaining in its own very specific way and well worth a go.
Right. Okay. So let's move on to wine drinking Boba Fett, who's going to give us a film review. What's the film review this week, Tom?
Well, I'm going to break with tradition a bit and go for a feature-length documentary that just popped up on Netflix this week. The other night, I very magnanimously allowed my wife to choose something for us to watch. And she selected this new Netflix-produced documentary, Secrets of the Saqqara Tomb. And I'm so glad she did. It's absolutely breathtaking. It's about a discovery in 2018 of an ancient tomb in the desert in Egypt, near the Step Pyramid, the oldest pyramid in the world. And they break into this tomb. They discover this tomb, and they read the inscriptions. And the name in the inscriptions is nobody that anybody has ever heard of. None of the Egyptologists or the local historians, nobody's heard of this name. And the more they look into it, the more sort of mysteries are thrown up by this guy's tomb. But the story isn't really the draw. It's interesting. But what's amazing is that the tomb they discover is 4,000 years old, and it is completely intact. By completely intact, I mean all the artifacts, all of the statues are unbroken, barely cracked. The paint is still bright. All of the inscriptions are really clear. And it's like a time capsule from 4,000 years ago. It's a tomb that looks better preserved, being 4,000 years old, than things, Roman ruins that are a quarter of that, and it's absolutely incredible. This tomb is just completely untouched. And anything that isn't complete in there, it's basically just broken in half, and they put it back together right in front of your eyes.
So just to put context in this, so Tutankhamun is 1700 years old, roughly. So this is older than that.
Yeah, this is one of the oldest tombs that they've like unearthed complete.
Yeah.
And years of watching rubbish on TV like Meet the Ancestors or Time Team has taught me in no uncertain terms that archaeology is a process of very slowly digging up tiny fragments of things and trying to work out what they are. Is it a pot? Is it a belt? Who knows? This is like Indiana Jones level archaeology.
So Tom, I watched one of these documentaries about this a while back, probably 2 or 3 years ago, where they were using satellites to actually find sites that they didn't even know existed by using the updated military satellite technology and so on. How did they come across this one? Was it using technology or?
No, it was just part of the standard Egyptian push for archaeology around the step pyramid, so that they'd unearthed nearby a burial ground, so not tombs, but just burials with bits and pieces and art. And just in the process of expanding that excavation, they found this entirely untouched tomb. And yeah, it's like the bit in Indiana Jones before, where he puts the staff of Ra in. It's that's barely an exaggeration. It is absolutely remarkable.
But doesn't this? I mean, I'm aware that I'm flirting with spoilers here, but doesn't this, in its own way, invite more questions? Because I'm sorry, I just frantically Googled this because it was scratching at the back of my head. The step pyramids themselves are older than 2,000 years old. So someone went back
4,000 to 5,000 years old.
So someone went back to get buried by something which was already ancient, which I didn't think they did.
Yeah, essentially, there's probably about 1,000 years difference between the step pyramid and this tomb that they uncovered.
I mean, it's when you start talking about times like, I mean, the one that blows my mind is Cleopatra is chronologically closer to now than the building of the Great Pyramid was to her being alive.
Yeah, absolutely.
The step pyramids are unimaginably ancient, but I wasn't aware that there were people still being I'll give this a watch because I wasn't aware there were people still being interred anywhere near them. I mean, obviously recent is the wrong word for something this old, but
a long time after. Yeah, sure.
No, it's good.
Yeah, if any of you have seen the Werner Herzog documentary Cave of Forgotten Dreams, he filmed that in 3D, and the technology of capturing it is part of the draw of it, is part of the experience of what sort of feeling like you're there. And the 4K for Secrets of the Saqqara Tomb does a similar job, I think. The detail which is revealed through it is just incredible. It's 2 hours long. It's a one-off feature-length documentary, and it's well worth your time. Super.
4K. I've got 8K here.
There were two things about it that I really like. One was that it was Egyptian archaeologists, a completely Egyptian team, rather than some Americans or Brits turning up and poking.
That's right. Yeah.
That was a nice change in itself, but also because it's not a pharaoh that they're excavating. It's just a relatively normal person. So you're getting a look into the life of ancient Egypt, an ancient Egyptian who wasn't a king, but was just a normal person. And things like the mummified cats and the fact they were a cat worshipping culture. And I thought, well, I'm in a cat worshipping household here actually. So quite well.
The cache of mummies that they find is something else. So yeah, I won't say any more about it, but you should definitely watch it because
it's really good.
Fascinating.
Sounds very good.
Yeah. I like the one I'm interested in, I'm going to go and watch this now that you've obviously recommended it. I'll watch it over the weekend. But the TV review that you're going to do next, this is something I've been looking forward to, and I just haven't got around to watching it yet. And I'm hoping you're going to say it's good and not be down on it like you normally are on.
I'd say I was looking forward to it probably about the same amount as you, by the sounds of it, Phil. And is
We're talking about Truth Seekers, by the way.
yeah, Truth Seekers. Sorry, yeah, just released on Prime. Yeah, and I was really looking forward to it too. I love the team. It's Nick Frost and Simon Pegg writing together again. The last time they did a project where it was just them without Edgar Wright was Paul, which I quite like. But
I really like Paul.
I remember finding it a bit too goofy. But Truth Seekers is not goofy. It's actually quite. It leans quite heavily into its horror, spooky atmosphere. But before I say anything about it more, I will just say kind of keep your expectations in check. That it isn't Shaun of the Dead and it isn't Hot Fuzz, and it's kind of unreasonable to expect it to be because those were such, flash in the pan, like not flash in the pan, like lightning in a bottle. That's the phrase I'm looking for.
The World's End.
Yeah, which is okay. I like The World's End, but it's not. It doesn't stand up against the other two.
It's the one Pegg, Frost, and Edgar Wright film I detest. And it's the characters. I just cannot get on with the characters at all.
I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it a lot more in a rewatch. The World's End, definitely. But no. So Truth Seekers is Nick Frost stars as a mobile phone technician, essentially. He works on signal masts and rolling out 6G to the country. But in his spare time, he is a ghost hunter, and he gets assigned an assistant who is very reluctant to join him in his ghost hunting because it turns out that the paranormal kind of follows him around wherever he goes. And it's got moments of being very funny and moments of being actually quite scary. But it also has a lot of, it requires quite a lot of patience, I would say. The feedback, I reviewed it. There's a review up on AVForums right now, but the feedback that has been coming from people is sort of something that I warn people against, which is that the first 3 episodes are not great. They have significance later in the series, which is kind of nice. So there's a good cohesive structure all the way through. From the beginning, they know where the story's going and they tie everything in, but that's not obvious to begin with. And they start out being a bit Monster of the Week, Doctor Who-ish. And I think people kind of understandably lost patience with that over the first 3 or 4 episodes, but it is worth sticking with. The last 5 or so episodes get steadily better and better. And by the end, I absolutely cannot wait for the second season.
How many episodes?
I thoroughly enjoyed it. 8.
Has it been commissioned for a second?
Not yet. No news.
Well, it does, really.
Yeah, no news. But it is set up very specifically for a continuation at the end of the first season. Of course it is. Well, yeah, I wouldn't say a cliffhanger, but there is a little extra.
They tease a bit, don't they?
Yeah, exactly.
But no, McDowell's really funny in it.
That's it. The supporting cast
big laughs.
make it. Malcolm McDowell as the father is brilliant. He is perfect. And Julian Barrett as the series villain.
Yeah.
I can't get enough of him. I think he's amazing. He plays it like pitch perfect, like egotistic cult leader. I do recommend it. It's not amazing, but it's definitely worth like 4 hours of your time. It's easily that entertaining. So
I'm gonna try and catch up with it over the weekend. Once I've watched
you can binge it pretty easy because it's basically 4 hours. So just think of it as 2 movies.
Yeah. It didn't feel like work watching it. So that's nice.
Right. Okay. Let's move things on because obviously we need to keep an eye on the clock, and we've still got lots to talk about this evening. So, Tom, you wanted to raise a subject about US TV previews. Lots of interesting stuff coming out in the US, but how the hang do we get over here?
Yeah, that's right. Recently, a whole slate of super interesting stuff was announced for November and December over in the US, across all of their various streaming platforms. You probably know that America has 10 times the number of streaming options that we do here, and we tend to pick from each of them, or the big streaming services here like Sky and Netflix and Prime tend to pick from the US networks. But there's some really, really fascinating stuff coming out, including a Showtime documentary about John Belushi, which looks completely brilliant and includes archival interviews with Dan Aykroyd and Carrie Fisher, Harold Ramis, Chevy Chase, John Landis, all of those sort of legends from that period of time. And that's not been picked up in the UK. Likewise, Moonbase 8, also on Showtime, which is destined, I think, to become known as the funny Space Force. It looks pretty good, but like a goofy space sitcom with Tim Heidecker and John C. Reilly, Fred Armisen, like American comedy, well-regarded American comedians. And so those are on Showtime. On CBS, there's a new Chuck Lorre sitcom, Chuck Lorre, King of Hack sitcom writers. Big Sky on HBO, which is another David E. Kelly thing. So we've got The Undoing at the moment, the Hugh Grant drama, but same writer has also just announced that he's got another drama coming out on HBO. Remake of Black Narcissus, one of the last roles for Diana Rigg in an FX TV series. And
I hope she wasn't too structural.
Well, she completed filming, and but yeah, all of these things just sort of raise the question about how the American streaming model is working at the moment. And I think arguably you could say that it kind of isn't. There's been talk, I think, on the podcast before, definitely within the forums, about this idea of packaging streaming platforms for you to, instead of just having to pick and choose like £7 a month here for that, £8 a month here for that. And the UK seems to kind of be doing all right with it. People complain about it, but we're kind of doing all right with it in comparison to the US, who've got all this splintering, like Peacock as well, and Hulu, and all the stuff that we don't have access to, but that our distributors Sky kind of takes the best of HBO, and
But is that the best way to do it then? Because if you think about it, if you've got all this fragmentation in the US, but you've got UK companies looking at that market, surely they can just pick up what is worth paying for and showing it in the UK and not picking up the dross.
Well, they can, but the point is kind of that they are not. They are not doing that. And we saw this really recently with Ridley Scott's Raised by Wolves, which received a lot of love in America, but we're still waiting for a UK...
That's an HBO Max series, isn't it?
It is HBO Max, yeah, that's right. And there's another thing similarly coming up, which is a new drama starring Maisie Williams called 2 Weeks to Live, which also looks to be really interesting. HBO Max, no UK distribution date.
HBO is usually Sky, isn't it?
It is. Sky Atlantic usually takes the majority of HBO stuff. But for some reason, they seem to be picking up... there doesn't seem to be any rhyme or reason to what they're picking up. So maybe...
There'll be nefarious focus groups somewhere, Tom. There always is. That's how it done. No, I'm not being facetious.
No, you're right.
But it does. There's what might be better to say is there's no transparency as to why certain things get traction and other things don't. I would say that even in the US, with a consequently larger viewer base and more scope for individual services to survive, fragmented systems do not survive indefinitely. You've got two companies playing this game, Amazon and Apple, who have essentially unlimited resources. I mean, especially Apple, because they don't have a space program to waste money on. If it comes to the point where Apple decides that actually creating their own content is a bit of an arse, they'll just start hoovering up the bits that they want.
And that's what Netflix is doing at the moment.
Well, no, I mean, Netflix is in a fight for its very existence because it doesn't have unlimited resources and it doesn't have a space program.
Well, it started cancelling a lot of things, which Netflix never cancelled. In fact, Netflix was the place that you went to with your cancelled show for it to continue, and it's flipped 180 degrees basically because they are cancelling a lot of stuff at the minute.
No, absolutely. They are embroiled in a contest for their very existence, and this is what happens when you are the early pioneer in something. I mean, choosing my words carefully because I can't direct you to all of the financial information that I got bored and poured over, but it's like Spotify's demise is essentially looks inevitable on a long enough time frame because they are playing against people that have unlimited resources and they don't have a particular USP. Their best hope is to be purchased by someone as an addendum, and so it is with some of these other things. But when it comes to these multiple streaming services which have 20% of their programming that we'd love to see in the UK. I mean, I don't want to sound breathtakingly cynical, but this problem will sort itself out over the coming years.
I think you're not wrong, and I think it's already started actually when you see CBS All Access rebranding to Paramount Plus or Paramount or whatever it is, Paramount on Demand. I can't remember, but yeah, they're already finding that they can't keep up what they're doing, and I think CBS All Access got a very quick reputation for just being a little bit crap, really, and they think that the rebrand is going to help them. Essentially, they've got Star Trek.
Hooray!
Poison Chalice. Right. I guess we need to move this on, but one that does stick out is Netflix is fighting for its life, but Sky needs to find some relevancy again.
Yeah,
and they could. Quite easily bring a lot of what you're talking about, Tom. And actually, Lee said in the comments, 2 weeks has already been on Sky. He watched it a few weeks ago.
Oh, well, I missed that. Oh, that's good. Good.
How very dare you, Tom?
There you go.
I mean, you've been sleeping again, haven't you? I'm afraid, Tom, that Kaz has set an impossible bar here because he apparently exists on, I don't know, Kaz photosynthesizes because he doesn't appear to rest or eat. So yeah, unfortunately, he set an impossible bar for not missing anything. So you can.
Okay, so we need to move it on anyway, and we need to move on to the fact that we lost the original James Bond. Not only that, we lost Sean Connery, and Sean Connery was just one of those actors. He was such a good actor, he didn't have to change his accent, and that just tells you what a consummate professional he was, what a great character actor he was, because you still bought the character even though he was talking in a Scottish accent in everything he ever did. He never ever changed it. And I've got to say, for me, James Bond was never a big thing because I was born after the Sean Connery Bond. So he wasn't my Bond. I think Roger Moore was probably more my Bond, because that's when I was brought up, same as Tom Baker would be my Doctor Who. But because he's a Scotsman and all the rest, he's been in some cracking films, and the body dross. Yeah, he's been an absolute dross as well. But the body of work is amazing. I mean, and even the cameo stuff that he used to do would just turning up, like Robin Hood. He turned up at the end, in that, and. What was that?
$500,000 he got for that, I think, for the last.
Really nice work if you can get it.
Yeah. So for most people, he'll be James Bond from a certain age bracket, or if you're a big Bond fan, he'll be that for you. But I think Steve will. His body of work was far more encompassing than just Bond, wasn't it?
Yeah, unlike Roger Moore, who really was just Bond and a few other films, Connery did actually have an interesting body of work, and also had a sort of a second wind in his career in the 80s and 90s when he won an Oscar for The Untouchables, when he did things like Outland, Time Bandits, and then into the 90s when he was doing when was Hunt for October in the late 80s.
Hunt for October late, but I mean The Rock. I mean he is
The Rock is brilliant,
absolutely
absolutely
magnificent in The Rock. No question.
And of course, Zardoz. Don't forget Zardoz.
We won't be forgetting Zardoz. And I hope that Phil keeps his promise about the picture for this.
Yes, I've got
podcast.
the picture. Yes.
Speaking of Zardoz, has anybody got any like unsung movies of Sean Connery, like a lesser known Sean Connery role that they'd recommend?
The Name of the Rose is one of my favorites.
That's a beautiful movie.
Great.
Ron Perlman as well in quite an early role in that.
And very young Christian Slater.
Yeah. Oh, Christian Slater in that is. Anyway, yeah, good choice.
Obviously Highlander.
Yeah,
Playing an
there could be only
Spaniard.
Playing an Egyptian with a Frenchman playing a Scotsman. I mean, it has everything you could ask for. It's magnificent.
There's the I can't remember the name of it now, and I'm going to kick myself when I remember it. But there's the Gawain and the Green Knight film with Miles O'Keefe.
Sword of the Valiant.
That's the one, Sword of the Valiant, where he is the Green Knight, and yeah, that's a good bit of fun nonsense.
And obviously Indiana Jones and Temple of
even though there's 15 years difference.
Yeah, it was an interesting. No, but
might as well have sent it to the Marx Brothers.
But he nailed it. That's the thing. So that's the.
I mean, let's face it. That Indiana Jones film is not great, but Sean Connery makes it. I think. It wasn't a strong film, but I think he.
Oh no! Come on, I absolutely adore that film.
Do you?
Yeah,
really?
I think you're slating most people's favorite Indiana Jones film, Phil.
Raiders is the best one.
Raiders is the best. Yeah. Absolutely.
Temple of Doom is the best, and I won't hear an argument against it.
Oh no!
Moving on.
This is not the time for this argument.
I have spoken.
But right, I mean, obviously, my background. I don't know how unknown it is, but it is by far not the best film that Sean Connery in, but subjectively, my favourite Sean Connery film is the one for which my background is, which is The Hunt for Red October.
Yeah,
it's just, I mean, it doesn't. It riffs on the book. It doesn't slavish. I mean, the book, like all Tom Clancy things, is 900 pages long, incredibly detailed. It's autism writ large in novels, but it's a fantastically entertaining film. And as you say, Phil, I mean, once again, it's the accent that makes it, and they will listen to the sounds of our silence.
Comrades, we sail into history.
It's just,
I'd just like to apologise for the really piss poor impressions this evening.
Fine, but nevertheless, it's I mean, I thoroughly enjoy that. I think that's a fine example of the work it is. And I have to be honest, if I've drunk enough, which happens, more often than not. Even the role which caused him to quit, the League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, isn't unwatchable. I find that periodically he is quite good in that. The limitations of the film are elsewhere.
I think the reason he quit was because he kind of thought, I think I'm losing my touch in terms of my finger on the pulse, because he turned down The Matrix.
Yeah.
He turned down playing Gandalf in Lord of the Rings.
Well, no,
so
he just didn't understand.
He made it very clear that he watched The Lord of the Rings and he still didn't understand it.
So he thought, I'll give it a go on League of Extraordinary Gentlemen. Whoops.
Yeah. So.
Although it's still better than Meteor, which is undeniably the worst film he's ever been in.
I watched a thing. It actually popped up on Facebook when I was scrolling through, and it was Billy Connolly introducing him to some actors' fellowship or whatever. And it's the funniest 5 or 6 minutes I've ever seen, because obviously they were really good friends, and he just rips them to bits. But Sean, ever the professional, is just sitting there grinning away. And if you see that clip, it is really, really funny. I was in tears at the end. It's just brilliant the way the two of them riffed. The only thing I would say is he was a bit of a hypocrite when it came to Scotland.
Yeah, I'm glad that you're saying this. I wasn't going to go there. I mean, we also need to cover some
slightly dodgy views about how you treat women as well.
Yes, there's that. Yeah. This is another fine example where it's necessary to separate the actor from the person. But no, I'm glad that you've gone on Scotland one, Phil. So you go in ahead on this one.
All I say is that he was very big for SNP and all the rest of it. Yet he lived in the Bahamas.
Lived in the Bahamas. Well, I've been to Scotland. I don't blame him for that.
Well, you haven't been to the right parts of Scotland then.
I like Scotland. The Highlands, actually. I've never been to the Highlands.
I like Scotland very much, but it's the case that I generally speaking try and avoid undue obsession with the politics of anywhere where I'm no longer actually active in. So maybe that's just me.
He is responsible for one of my favourite quotes, which is when they were on the set of The Rock, and it was produced by Jerry Bruckheimer and Don Simpson, and Don Simpson died. And Jerry Bruckheimer came onto the set the next morning and said, I'm sorry to announce that that Don Simpson passed away last night. And Sean Connery went, well, I can't say I'm surprised. Also, I love that in Time Bandits, Terry Gilliam had written in the script, and the warrior removes his helmet to reveal Sean Connery, or an actor of equal standing but cheaper. And then they rang to get Sean Connery.
Yeah, good stuff. Well, I mean, talking about Bond, rest in peace, Sean Connery. He'll always be our huge
90 years old. He had a good innings. Great back catalogue of movies.
Not a bad life. And he was a milkman as well. What more do you want?
Yeah, we need to move it on. But staying with Bond, because Apple, Steve, they tried to buy the latest Bond film.
I don't think as much Apple tried to buy it as much as Eon was shopping it round to Apple, Netflix, Amazon. Unfortunately, Eon were asking for $600 million for it, and they got told to sod off. I think Apple did actually counter, though, apparently, with $300 million. And if I was Eon, I'd have taken the money.
Yeah. Well, Chris Nolan was talking recently about how Tenet had performed at the box office, and I think it got... Well, do you know what? It turned out to not be a profit, but not be a massive disaster. I think in total it lost about 50 million, which for a time when like New York and LA cinemas were closed, isn't the worst it could have done. So I think this idea of looking at I'm sure the studios are looking at that as kind of their benchmark for at least minimizing losses, I guess.
Yeah, but 600 seems a bit toppy because, if that's just money for Eon, that's equivalent to the film making 1.2 billion at the box office, which it wouldn't even be making under normal circumstances.
No.
And I suppose that the film costs about 250 million to make. Another 100 million they did a lot of marketing back in April. So let's say they're in the hole.
Also, not just that, Steve, they actually marketed it twice, didn't they?
Yeah. So they're giving us the whole for say 400 million. So I can see why they're trying to get enough to make a profit. But I don't know. I mean, I think if they release it in April,
they're going to struggle.
Does anyone think things are going to be any better for the cinemas? I don't think so. So I think maybe if they haggled a bit more and maybe got 400 million, they could have done the deal.
They need to just get their expectations in check. It needs to be staying afloat until things start to return to normal, if they ever do. Obviously.
Yeah.
No, I mean, this could be the we've discussed this before. This could be the welcome return of actually trying to make a film with not an absurd amount of money. Actually,
I don't think that's a bad thing. I think if they concentrate on on story and making clever and intelligent. I recently watched. Did I tell you this last week? I watched Upgrade and The Invisible Man.
Yeah, super low budget and super great.
Both cost sod all and excellent films, really enjoyable movies. And you think they can do it. They can do it. You don't have to spend $250 million on a movie.
Well, I think we're going. This is me being, digging out a crystal ball I don't have, but I suspect we're going to view some of the past, excesses of cinematography as. Extraordinary pieces of their time, but I think that it may be that their time for at least a significant duration now is done.
We're going to end up with premium video on demand and House of Mouse cinemas, basically.
And I think we discussed it earlier on. Tom discussed it earlier on. Some of the actors that are actually moving over from film to TV now. Some of these TV programs that are put together, these dramas and so on, they can attract not only budgets but big actors as well. And I was saying this on Monday to Steve. Mandalorian is the best thing that's happened to Star Wars since probably Rogue One in the original trilogy.
No question.
It is absolutely fantastic. And you can see where the money's being spent, but you can also see, that's good artwork, Stuart, actually, like that. You can see where the money's being spent, but you can also see the love and respect that is being given to it, and to the canon, and it is fan service, but it's done the right way and not the J.J. Abrams way of just throwing everything on screen at once and then hoping it all makes sense.
Spot a lens flare here and there.
It reminds me very much of old adventure TV.
It's a Western.
Old Westerns, and yeah, absolutely.
I just hope that this sets a precedent that all murderous droids need to be voiced by Richard Ayoade in this particular.
Agreed.
I mean, this is one of those things where it probably works better for parts of the world that haven't watched the IT crowd. That Moss is essentially intoning spaceship maneuvers, but nevertheless, it was still tremendously enjoyable.
I think the highest praise that I've given it since it came out, The Mandalorian, is that it fits in with the old Star Wars expanded universe. Yeah. This is kind of me sounding a bit like a loser, but when I was a teenager, I just devoured those expanded universe books, and it is an extra bit of Star Wars, and it's so in a way that nothing has been. Rogue One, I guess, kind of, but other than that, nothing else has felt like this is definitely the Star Wars that I remember, and it's a kind of a miracle.
Rogue One was different again, no less enjoyable for it, but I mean, Rogue One was. It didn't necessarily have a parallel in the expanded universe. It was. It's like a sort of Vietnam movie in the Star Wars universe. It's in so many ways.
But it's Star Wars. So
it was, but there was a casual brutality to it, which had been sort of glossed over in so many of the other things.
Yeah. And it's there in Mandalorian as well.
Has that to an extent, but it doesn't. If you there's still if you like other than the very deliberate activities of certain Imperials and so on and so forth, there's more of a sanctity of human life in some regards than there was in Rogue One. Let's not forget that
but he can be a brutal and a cold-blooded when he wants to be, though, man.
No, absolutely,
which is it makes the character more interesting, I think. So this first episode, I know Steve's going to go off on one in a second, so I'm trying to get everything in before we mention the aspect ratio changes. But I thought the first episode was absolutely fantastic, kids. You could point the finger and say fan service. No, I think those characters had to be there to make that story work.
It was great to see Tuskens humanized. It was a Star Wars where they weren't racist against Sand people. That's got to be a first, right? I mean, and also a very exciting cameo.
I don't know, the Family Guy where Peter's trying to get a choir of them to sing. I felt that was the first.
I can't say I've seen that. I don't know.
I like the Crate Dragons Roar was the one that Obi-Wan made.
The Obi-Wan Blu-ray one,
the most recent version, but
not on the special editions, but on the original. Yeah, absolutely. So Mandalorian is great. Right, let's talk about aspect ratios very quickly because we're running over time now, Steve. But I'm with you, but I think we come at it just to give some context that stuff like this we watch on projectors, on scope screens with masking. So we are already set up for
a niche of a niche.
Because you said, what did you think about the aspect ratio changes? And I said, what aspect ratio changes? Because I was set up for I was masked up for 240:1, so I didn't notice the changes. But it seems to be one of these things that certainly Nolan does it, and
I will say The Mandalorian, I mean, it looks awesome, right? I mean, for a TV series,
it looks absolutely,
Star Wars movie, and obviously they generally, up until this episode at least, which was a good episode. I mean, the show's definitely found its feet, and I thought it worked really well. But last season it was all scope ratio, which obviously ties it in with the movies. They did the same thing with the Clone Wars. In this episode, as the Krayt Dragon comes out of its cave, it opens out to 1.78:1. Now, I was watching on scope screen, as were you, Phil. I wasn't masking it because I didn't think I needed to. And then suddenly I thought, hang on, it's just gone to 1.78 to 1. So that kind of annoyed me. But I did watch it actually this afternoon, or just before this podcast, actually. I watched it on my LG. And obviously when you're watching it on TV, that when it opens out, it's actually quite a nice little trick. And it is clearly being framed for 1.78 to 1 when the frame opens out. So I have less of an issue with that.
There's definitely cases. Sorry, Steve. Yeah, there's definitely cases where it's gimmick, but there's also cases where
anything Nolan does, because it's framed for 240 to 1. Everything is framed for 240.
And also, but
it's dead space.
He's shooting on 35mm anamorphic at 2.35 to 1. He's also shooting some stuff on IMAX film, which is 1.43 to 1.
Yeah, IMAX is his preferred.
But he's cutting between the two in the same scene from shot to shot. So there's no continuity to it. There's no a sense of making it a single sequence where you could frame it for that aspect ratio. So
yeah,
the Mandelorian was framed for 1.7 to 1, and that's fine. But if you look at any frame of a Nolan movie when it's in the IMAX scenes, there's a lot of negative space above and below, and you can easily frame it back to 2.35 to 1. And it looks very well framed. And clearly he must have been thinking about that, because that's how most people are going to see it at the cinema.
Yeah, it's a difficult thing, isn't it? Because the cinema experience is obviously, well, Nolan has made no secret that it is very important to him, the cinema experience. But yeah,
unless it's 3D.
Well, yeah, but
yeah, the cheek to call 3D a gimmick, and he mucks about variable aspect ratios and thinking, hang on.
But I think it's difficult to call these things like either a gimmick or not, because in isolation, a lot of little cinematic choices could be labeled as a gimmick, and it's just whether or not it is appropriately tied into what the film is trying to do. Like, there's quite a nice example in the Grand Budapest Hotel where different I think it's memories, different time periods. That's right. Different time periods are framed differently, and it looks really lovely. It's a nice little extra touch that ties into an element of the film that makes sense. But when it's just done for like, look at this thing, there's actually not actually that much more to see, but look at it anyway, you kind of wonder why it's going on.
To bring it back, what I'm going to throw at all of us now is, well, it's creator's choice, it's the creator's intent, and if that's what they want to do, then that's the tools that they have at their disposal. And if they think it makes their project look better, or it gets their point of view across in terms of storytelling or whatever, then really, we kind of really complain if we're then saying, well, you've got to watch
as long as they don't do it with
professionals.
I'm laughing.
Yeah, I would. I'm going to disagree with Phil a bit here, because it's sort of up to us as the viewers of this art that we have to decide whether or not those choices they've made actually work, actually do the job that they are intending them to do. And if they're not, then they're not a good choice. I think Nolan's done it a couple of times where it's been like, wow, this is big, this is impressive, this is awesome. And he's also done it a lot of times where you think, what am I meant to be looking at that is not in the main body of the picture? So there is creator's intention, and that is super important, but equally important is how it's received and how it's viewed and how it's interpreted.
Yeah, well, I get where you're coming from, and I'm not going to disagree with you, because I think you've got some valid points there. But again, it can confuse people, and these things, like I was saying, the tools that are available. We're seeing it again now with HDR. We have people who are putting themselves across as purists and who want to see things as it's created and intended, and then are being quite disrespectful to the creator in terms of, well, this film hasn't got anything over 200 nits, so therefore it's fake HDR. This is fake because it's not hitting 1,000 nits and all this. And that misses the whole point of technology. It misses the whole point of these tools that are there for filmmakers. If a filmmaker decides that he wants to shoot something in a certain way, or the director of photography says, I want to do it this way, and they're multi-Oscar winners like Roger Deakins, then you accept that as, well, that's the choice that they've made, and that's the way that they want it to be seen. So
yeah, absolutely, can't disagree with that. Yeah,
So, yeah,
it's a choice. It's a deliberate choice.
yeah. So yeah, it's a subject that we could be going on and on and on about, really, and we've run out of time. So before we finish, Tom, do you want to talk about your thumbs again?
Oh yeah, I can do the video detailing things coming to Prime and Sky and Disney is available on YouTube now. I've been getting some really lovely feedback from it, including so has he seen these things or not? Tom, you need to get a haircut. Unfunny. So if you would like to leave some similar comments, then you should head over and watch it straight after the podcast.
Don't worry, Steve's already been blamed for the Marantz HDMI 2.1 issue because Steve should have known about it. Not Marantz, Steve, it's his fault.
Yeah.
These AV reviews.
I'm all for this.
Thanks for that, Tom. Yeah, go check out Tom's videos. They are very, very funny. The Kate Winslet as a horse had me in stitches. So thanks for that picture in my head, Tom. And before we finish, podcast competition.
Yeah, sure. So you can win a copy, as I said before, of El Camino, the Breaking Bad movie. You have to use the following question and select the correct answer on the competition page. So the question is, which late actor was a standout supporting star in El Camino?
Easy, right? Obviously, the answer's on AV Forums. Go have a look at it. That's it for the podcast this week. My thanks to Ed Selley.
Oh, hang on. There is no certainty, only opportunity.
Tom Davies.
Penny for the guy.
And Steve Withers.
Are you like a crazy person?
Yep. If you enjoyed the podcast, then give us a like and subscribe, and obviously hit the notification bell on the YouTube channel so you don't miss any of the videos that we publish. You can also follow us on Twitter and Facebook. You can bookmark AVForums.com for latest reviews, news, and video. And of course, leave us a 5-star rating for the podcast on any service that you use that allows you to rate us. Then please do. And that is it for this week. We hope you've enjoyed the show. We'll see you again next week. Bye-bye.